Hey, awesome. Welcome, everybody, to our League of Entrepreneurs Fireside Chat with Tim Berry, the founder of Palo Alto Software, otherwise known as LivePlan. Very grateful for you to be joining us today, Tim. Just a couple of slides here. I'm James Schumark, co-founder CEO of the Startup Race. My co-founder, Mike Closer, is helping me run the meeting today. And here's the agenda for today. So check-in networking. We're going to doing the welcome now. Then we'll have the fireside chat with Tim. There'll be an opportunity for some Q&A at about half an hour or so. And then we'll have network breakout rooms, and we'll close at 8:30 because Tim will have to get to work because it's very early in the morning for you, Tim. I do appreciate you showing up so early. Okay, just want to highlight this graph to everybody. If people aren't familiar with this is Paul Graham's research through Y Combinator and what the startups very often experience, and it's a challenge that we as an organization and a whole bunch of other people are trying to solve. And the reason that so many startups fail, no market need, run out of cash, not the right team, get out competed. Now, of course, Tim is going to help us to avoid, or certainly Tim's business, LivePlan, can prevent the second reason. So you don't need to be in the 29% of startups that fail after today's interview, Fireside Chat. And there's a link there if you feel the need to research and look up that stat yourself. So Mike and I, we've designed this accelerator program that has 4 phases. It's based on a solid foundation of ideation validation, and certainly a large part of that is your financials, and we anchor it with the traction roadmaps on leanstack.com just to make sure that your revenue streams are not works of fiction or fantasy, so you understand how hard it is to actually achieve them. And yeah, so if you know anybody who wants to come and start a business in the UK, our website is on thestartuprace.com, and people can sign up there. Okay, so we're going to move to the main attraction. So I'll stop my sharing and highlight Tim, spotlight for everybody. So here we go. Thanks, Tim. I really do appreciate you being on the call for us. Of course, your business is one of the best in the world today. And so I do appreciate you giving up the time to join us. Perhaps it wasn't.
Thank you for that, James. And my business has a great management team that I found for it. So I don't go into the office. Well, before COVID, I didn't go into the office every day. I am chairman, but not day-to-day running anymore. And they're doing a great job. So I'm happy to be with you, giving back, helping as much as I can for other people.
Yeah. And I presume that your road or your path to the success you've achieved wasn't as simple and as straightforward as most entrepreneurs think it's going to be. Do you want to maybe give us an insight into what your journey was like?
Yeah, it took a much longer time. There was one point on the way to where I am today that we had 3 mortgages and $65,000 in credit card debt. It was my case. Very stubbornly over a long time, sticking to something that might have been ahead of its time when I brought it out. People in the angel investor and VC market didn't believe in business plan software. It was hard initially to make people understand that we were respecting how important it is that every business plan is unique. And we weren't trying to make a product out of your thinking or the content of the business plan. We were making something that automated some of the tasks involved that lend themselves to automation, like standardizing the financials according to generally accepted accounting principles and the numbers and finance behind them, and formatting a page in the subset of those plans that need to become a document, which is a tiny subset of all plans. But there was a need there. It took me, the first time I published business plan software was 1984. And Palo Alto Software finally took off in middle 90s. Computing had to change. The storage, memory, and capabilities of personal computing had to change. I spent that, well, better part of a decade supporting my entrepreneurial urges with consulting. I was consulting in business planning and helping dealers for major computing companies for really about a decade while I was building this company without outside investment, improving the software and spending only what I could fund myself from, well, mortgages and credit card debt and my consulting until it finally took off in the middle 90s. And it's been through so many iterations. I mean, getting a business going. We finally got outside investment in 2000. We were already selling more than $4 million a year. We were already profitable and we had no debt. We brought in a minority interest from Silicon Valley Venture Capital. And then 3 years later, valuations had changed so much that we had to cinch up our belts and guard our cash for a while and buy them back. That was 18 or so years ago now. And we've been running it as owned by the entrepreneurs ever since. So I've been on both sides of this. I've been an angel investor myself since 2009, which I found nice to be on the other side of that table. But I've been a long time on building the business and scrimping and saving and figuring out how we could afford some ads and getting product reviews. It was a long time coming.
So I know that from my experiences in the angel community, your perspective does change, and it is very useful. I mean, when I first got involved in this game, it was a bit of a mystery to me, and I didn't really understand the whole the principles behind it. But with an angel's perspective, looking back at what you did previously in the beginning, is there anything that I know you look out for certain signals in potential teams to invest in? What signals would you say what good signals did you have in the past that would have appealed to a potential investor?
For me, I can understand completely. I was with my consulting, I was also consulting to venture capitalists about what to invest in. So
that was handy.
I understood why I wasn't as investable as the businesses that I've invested in and wanted. Business planning is not a huge market. You couldn't make a $100 million business out of our business. We have a dominant market share, and we're still less than $20 million a year. So you might do the whole market, it might be $30 million a year. So that's one reason why my company wasn't investable. That's something that investors look for. And to explain that is sort of, there's a time variable there. In the late 90s, when we raised venture capital, businesses like ours were being valued by the investors based on eyeballs, web traffic. And we had bplans.com beginning in January of 1995. We had a couple million unique users, visitors every month by 1999. When they bought into Palo Alto Software, they were buying into the web property, bplans.com, in their mind, not the software revenue. And as the .com crash happened like 6 months, a year later, valuations went down. And since then, we've been valued based on the software business. So the question was, what did I have that investors look for? It was eyeballs initially. And as I try to be objective, I can't answer that the way you asked it. I can answer, why wouldn't I invest in Palo Alto Software?
Okay.
I think that's a much more useful question, because I'm a special case that is not a good investment. I mentioned when we finally got investment, I said we were profitable and we had no debt. Investors need businesses that can't fund their own growth. That's where you get the sweet spot that you want to give X amount of money, and that business that's received that money because it has the money can afford to lose money while it grows and it hits some certain inflection point. So the angel investors give $500,000. That gets the business deficit spending to where it's a good investment for the venture capital to do Series A for $2 or $3 million. And then venture capital Series A funds more deficit spending while they're still not making a profit, but they're growing like hell. So they get to 10, 15, $20 million in revenues, and then they can go to Series B where they get 30 or 40 million, and the cycle goes on. Investors don't win when there's a happy, well-run company that supports its own growth, that doesn't need outside money, whose founders and owners like what they're doing and are ready to do it for the long term. My investors, when I bought them out, it was because I don't want anybody to lose money investing in me. And the lead on that was somebody who had been a classmate of mine at Stanford Business School, and they were trapped. So this is, again, I'm answering the wrong question, but I think it's more useful. A minority share in Palo Alto Software in 2003 was having your money held hostage. We didn't have debt. We were profitable. We didn't need their money. We didn't have to sell. They were dying for us to sell out so that they could get their money back. That's the only way investors get their money back, is when the company sells out and goes liquid. But what people were offering us was not an interesting, attractive offer. Us was, at that point, we had 40, 45 employees, 3 of whom were family members of mine, and we liked it. We enjoyed it. We still enjoy it. When I say I have a great management team, let's be honest, the CEO is my second of 4 daughters. She's done a great job. That puts us in the sweet spot of good company. I think we're in an enviable position because this is fun to do and it generates money, but it wouldn't be a good outside investment.
Yeah, because the total addressable market's just not big enough.
Yeah. And you don't want to invest in happy entrepreneurs who don't need the money and can grow and prosper without the investment.
So you invest in desperate entrepreneurs.
You invest in entrepreneurs who need the money to grow fast and raise up their valuation really high. So you need the several factors. I mean, the potential market is something else. If you gave us $10 million in investment right now, we couldn't create a $50 million market out of what we're doing. And it just, so often as I was in the audience as an angel investor listening to pitches, I would see companies that were good businesses for the founders and didn't need the money. And that's not a good investment.
Wow, I've never heard that before. That's a very, very insightful statement. So I really do appreciate you making that. So with if people are going to be using LivePlan to do their financials, how would they? Obviously, so we need to have a large total addressable market. We need to have ambitious entrepreneurs who want to grow fast. And Noam Wasserman's book talks about, entrepreneurs who want to get rich. Yeah, so they give away, they're prepared to sell equity in the company and dilute their control, as it were. And is there a way that entrepreneurs can use LivePlan to demonstrate this, this appealing picture for angel investors?
Yes, definitely, and for sure. And let's focus in on what the investors want. And this, I've been through more than 100 pitches now. I've invested in 14 companies. I've seen how this works. I was consultant to them since the 80s. So what you want from LivePlan is management, better business management. And you use that LivePlan to start well before you're presenting anything to investors with setting your plan right for yourself as the entrepreneur, the founder. You go with LivePlan and you start with a lean business plan that you write down key points of strategy. Don't write long text for investors yet. From the very beginning, write down key points for strategy, which starts with, well, what are you not doing? Problem, solution, business offering, and identity. That's your strategy. What problem are you solving for whom? How are you solving it? That's a solution. What is your market that you're looking for? Who are these people? And identity is like, why you? How are you different? How can you solve this? That's your strategy. And it doesn't have to be long text. It has to be essentially what you're not doing. You know, Michelangelo started with a big hunk of marble and he took things out to create the sculpture. With business strategy, it's about what you're not doing, who isn't in your market. So that's bullet points. And in the beginning, you're writing it down for yourself. You're starting to draft a pitch and an elevator speech in your head, but you're writing it down for yourself to keep track of it. And then that, I said strategy, and then tactics. You know, tactics are pricing, distribution, versions, features and benefits, channels, the website, when are you going to, those are all tactics. Marketing mix is tactics. Don't do it fancy. Do it from the very beginning, but do it just bullet points in the beginning. And then do numbers. You have to have, in order to build a business, you really have to have a sales forecast based on drivers of sales. Don't say 1% of a $10 billion market. Say this many units per store in this many stores, or this many unique visits on the website that leads to this conversion rate, which means this many units sold through the web, this many subscribers, this many seminars that you do is going to sell units. We go with a sales forecast from the drivers and then forecast costs and expenses. And ultimately from there, you can do cash flow. And that, by the way, is where LivePlan is very, very strong, from reasonable assumptions to projected cash flow. You need that to run your business. Before you're talking about a business plan for investors, you need to run the business. And then finally, I said three things: strategy, tactics, essential numbers. The fourth, concrete specifics. Look ahead. What are the key milestones? What do you have to do? Not every little detail, but major milestones. When does the website launch? When do you get the VP marketing that you need? When does the advertising start running? What is the major trade show? Look at the future and set up 5, maybe just the major milestones that you work for, and then add in, and this is still, we're talking about a lean plan. So you still don't have 10 pages when you print this out yet, and that doesn't matter. Add in with your major milestones, responsibilities, who's responsible and what's the budget, and what are the metrics of success. Business plans are about tracking and management. So if you can't track it, then you don't really have a business plan. So what are the metrics? If you're talking about Facebook likes or Twitter retweets, Twitter followers, if you're talking about emails sent, if you're talking about conversion rates, make sure you have the metrics from the very beginning. And write down your assumptions, because you'll need them later. And there's your lean business plan. Now, how does that help you get to investors? That's going to be the key, because investors don't really look at what you say you're going to do nearly as much as what you've already done. That's how angel investors will evaluate. It won't be this one says they're going to get $30 million and this one says they're going to get to 15 million. So we want the 30 million. If the one that's getting to 15 million has demonstrable milestones met, already accomplishments, we have the team in place, we launched and we have this many users, and here's the line chart of the curve of users. Here we've launched and we're in this many stores, and here's what you see of the performance of sales per month per store. Investors are going to evaluate for the future what you've done in the past, and your live plan is going to give you from the very beginning the tracking of here's what we said, here's what we did, here's where we're moving forward. And as you move and grow your company and start dealing with investors, you're going to be keeping that live plan fresh. Every month you're going to review and revise, and that will give you a way to track what's important. It will become like the screenplay of your pitch. You won't just do a pitch. And for those who say don't do a business plan, yeah, have that live plan in the background. That's the screenplay of your pitch. And when the investors finally do ask for your business plan, it will be during due diligence. They'll reject people without looking at the plans. By the time they ask for your plan, they're interested. And at that point, your lean business plan gets you 75, 80% of the way. You add an executive summary, you add some descriptions, you add the founder's background, describe the product better, put in some of the proofs like the letter from the distributor or the web traffic, line charts, and so on. And then you've got a business plan. So you're going to run your business with plan versus actual, constant corrections in your lean business plan that's in LivePlan. And from there, you'll spin out. And LivePlan, by the way, will give you charts and graphs to use as slides for the investors, and it'll give you the text if you want to write it, but it doesn't need it. So that's kind of a long answer, but maybe too much summary. That's where you're going. That's how your live plan drives success.
And you know that you've written a book on this topic as well, that people can, even a course, I do believe, on your personal website that people can take and learn how this stuff works, alongside the live plan training videos and everything else. So I think there's lots of opportunities out there for entrepreneurs to learn, from the assets you've created, and to, get closer to becoming an investable company.
There's a big myth in this area that with my work, I try to dispel the myth. People too often live in the idea that you create a business plan document and that then sells the idea to investors. That's wrong. You create a live business plan that you work with, and through that you create a business, and investors are looking at your business thinking that the business plan is going to sell the business. Is like thinking that some brochure that they make is going to sell the car. What's going to sell the business is what you've done, the milestones you've met, the team you've collected, and the investors will look at that and they'll listen to your pitch and they'll listen to your summary and read your summaries and so on. And the investors are going to look into their own imaginations to validate for themselves what you've got. They're going to go to their experience and say, is this market real? Does this make sense? And when investment happens, the investors have decided for themselves that this opportunity is real. They haven't looked at your numbers and decided they want to participate in those numbers. They've looked at you and your management team and your market and your product, and they've said, I want in with that management team and that market and that product. Wow. That's the big myth. The business plan is part of it because it's part of due diligence. If they start to like you from what you've got, then I've never seen, and well, 14 investments. I've never done one alone. That rarely happens. And I've never seen one that the business plan wasn't involved before the check was written. But the business plan doesn't sell the business sells the business.
And the team proving they can execute and get stuff done. In our previous teaser interview, you talked about the not making too much profit. And I think you said your company, you aim for 2% profits and you reinvest everything else in growth. How many entrepreneurs do you think understand that or how to do that correctly?
From what I've seen, James, in these pitches that I've been witness to and at some points I've written checks for, is there's a vast misunderstanding from particularly younger entrepreneurs that they think investors are looking for current profits. Goes back to what I said. In my world, growth and profits are either or to a certain extent. If you focus on profits, you're not going to maximize growth. And the investors, my 2% is a special case. We don't have outside investors. We need minimum profits in order to fund our growth. The working capital has to grow, and that's where you have profits. They stay in the company. In the case of going out and looking for investment, it's a balancing act because profits mean you haven't optimized growth. And the whole reason for investment, as I was saying earlier, is you're going to use somebody else's money to grow the hell out of this business. So profits are suspect. And true story, back 3 years before I finally got venture capital, we had grown from $300,000 to $2.5 million in sales in like 12 months. So I wanted investment. That was the world I came from. I had gone to business school at Stanford and I was a consultant to venture capitalists. I wanted an investment. Well, the first VC that came to my office in Eugene, Oregon and listened to my pitch, listened carefully and said, Tim, nobody's going to invest in you because you're too profitable. And I was amazed. What the hell? This is a joke. This is a joke, right? And he then explained to me what I explained to you, like within this thing, that no, we don't look for profits. We look for potential growth, and profits are, well, actually he used this analogy. I don't know how many of you are familiar with somewhere in the middle 1800s, they did the Oklahoma land rush in the United States. The state of Oklahoma was wide open and they had a whole bunch of people in horses and wagons who lined up on the border somewhere, and there was a gunshot or something to start, and they rushed off to stake out their land in the state of Oklahoma. There are movies about it. I mean, it was 18 something, God knows. Mm-hmm. He used that analogy and he said, look, what's going on the web. Now this is 1997-ish. So what's going on with the web is it's the Oklahoma land rush, and you being profitable right now, it means you stopped too early. You didn't wait until you got to the good land. You stopped too early. Wow. So we didn't have outside investment. This was my wife and I with 3 mortgages and all this credit card debt. We didn't have the option of not having profits. We needed to fund ourselves. So it's a different model.
Yeah, yeah. So if what percentage of profits do you think an entrepreneur should retain to avoid cash flow blips?
Well, the 2% is real for me running Palo Alto Software. Now 2021, I stepped back as I called it president until I stepped back. I wasn't as fancy as CEO, but then Sabrina Parsons, who is my daughter, I became CEO in 2007. And my instructions to her have always been aim for 2% profits. That's enough to fund our growth with working capital. In our case, we don't have outside investors, so we can't overspend. But 2% is enough. And if you're getting more than 2%, you're not maximizing growth. Even though we're not out for investment, we're a tech company, we're a software company, and we value growth more than profits. We take salaries, so we do make money with the company. But if it's more than 2%, then we should have been spending more on pay-per-click marketing. I mean, it's as simple as that. It's a knob that you can turn. You go on one end to marketing and on the other end to profits, and I want that knob way over towards marketing. That's the way we run this company.
And is that because you want to defend the position you have, or or it's going to generate in more sales?
Somewhere back decades ago, in software business, I formed the opinion, I can't validate this, I don't have data, but I became sure that in software, it's either grow or die. There isn't a maintain the status quo. You keep growing. So for example, with LivePlan that you are using, we have 80 employees now, and 23 of them are full-time every day coding, developing the application to be better and better and better. They're working on improvements in the way you take, right now it's improvements in the way you can take past data and move it forward to be future forecast. Improvements in the way we pull your actual data from QuickBooks or Xero to create the plan versus actual charts that you'll use to manage. It's always working forward. You can never sit back and rest in a software business because computers change, standards change, what we can do changes all the time. So you have to be investing in that sort of, I guess that might be defensive. And offensively, we have a knob to turn with pay-per-click. It's funny how clearly it is. James, pay-per-click, there's an auction going on constantly on the web. We buy, for example, we offer so much per click on the search business plan software. And if we offer $8 a click, we'll get almost all of the searchers. If we offer $2 a click, we'll get like 5% of the searchers. And if we try to get we lose the sweet spot. There's a sweet spot in there where our pay-per-click offer generates us enough of the searchers that we get the ones who are really interested and we don't go broke, and we end up making more per click for what we're paying, more per dollar than what we're spending. And if we try to get the whole market, it's a very interesting constant auction going on, so that in marketing software over the web, you've got knobs to turn, and you're always faced with decisions about how much you're spending. And we want to grow. We do not want to finish up with profits. We want, well, more than 2% profits.
Wow. And of course, you just articulated why it's important for entrepreneurs to know the numbers, to know the formula of how this stuff works. So I think we're going to open it up to questions now. And Isaac, you can put the questions in the chat, and then I'll ask Tim. So Isaac has just asked, what happens to your 2% profits?
2% is an arbitrary number that I generated. There is nerdy analysis you could do with any company that is called the sustainable growth that they taught in business school. I'd have to Google it, frankly, to remember it. But from the numbers, the past numbers of a company, you can generate a sustainable growth rate. How fast can you grow at this level of profits? And I learned, now I love numbers. I loved Excel. That's what got me into this business in the beginning. And of course, we built software to substitute for Excel. But much as I love the numbers, I learned while running the business that the numbers are just one input. The gut feel guesses, educated guesses, are a very powerful input too. And I generated the number 2% profits as my best guess. I think it was informed 20 years ago with a sustainable growth analysis, but since then it's worked. We don't run out of cash. If we get 2% profits, we fund our growth. And I think I saw pass by, there's a little alert with a chat that when I say 2% profits, I mean taxable income. I'm talking about after all the deductions. I'm talking about after, well, we don't pay interest because I said we don't have debts, but salaries and bonuses and everything else. When I say 2%, I mean that's what we report to the Internal Revenue Service every year as our taxable income.
Yeah. So instead of paying tax, you invest the money in growing the company.
Pretty much. I mean, we pay a little bit of tax with 2%. You know, we're still paying some taxes, and we do definitely bonus our employees, and every last one of them in a profitable year. Before we're going to pay taxes on profits, we're going to spread that out to all of our employees. That makes for a happy company. We have a very, very low turnover rate in Palo Alto Software.
So that's great. Somebody put a question online about Tesla. If investors look at growth, why is Tesla's share price increased when the company was already highly profitable? And why still investors going crazy into it?
I own some Tesla stock. What I want to know is, why has it decreased so much since December? I don't want to know why has it increased. The US stock market is a different animal than what we're talking about with venture capital and angel investors. The US stock market, I have a portfolio, I mind my portfolio, but I don't think I'm an expert on that, and I haven't sold my Tesla stock, but I gotta say, I liked it much better in December than I do right now in June. So I don't know. I don't know. I'm tempted to sell the damn thing. I think the market is paying too much attention to things other than fundamentals with Tesla. So
right. Okay, so there's still an opportunity for people to put more questions in the chat if they want to ask Tim. So if nobody's going to put a question, I'll need to think of some other questions to ask myself, just to keep the ball rolling here. Okay, so Emil has asked how to attract investment when my product is very disruptive and inexistent with potential to create a new market. I get annoyed with an investor not getting it.
Emil, the first thing I'd recommend is, you're already doing it, is you get with James and the like. Don't at the very beginning start on your own with investors. Group up, get some resources. Where you are, there will be groups of angel investors, and the way in, contrary to all the mythology about you have to get an introduction from somebody and all this that I think is just obsolete, old information. The way in is through a group. Google, well, angel investors near me. wherever near me is, probably Edinburgh, but and see what groups there are and get your business in front of investors. That's the easiest way to get it there. And then when you're there with investors, I can give you some tips. The first thing for getting real feedback is there's a sense of binariness. Feedback from investors is going to be, in my experience, very useful and very generous, except when entrepreneurs have been defensive and sort of contentious during the pitch. In the investment settings I've been in over and over again, when we get investors or when we get founders who are taking questions as a challenge rather than an opportunity and being right at every point, then after the meeting is over, nobody's really interested in giving them feedback because it feels like it's going to be a fight. It's going to be an argument. And on the contrary, when we get founders who take a question as, yes, we're really worried about that too. And if you have more feedback, we're particularly worried about this. Founders who see investors as a potential source of advice and information and connections will get great feedback. And founders who see investors as opponents won't. So.
Yeah, and we often, one of our mantras is, if you ask for money, you get advice. If you ask for advice, you get money.
Yeah, that's not bad. Yeah, one of mine that I'll add in there is, in this whole world, yes, well, you never get a yes. Maybe means no, and yes means maybe.
Right. Well, that sounds, yeah. That sounds like the experience I had with girls when I was younger as well.
Maybe we take a minute and talk about the process. Now, the way this works, I'm suggesting that you start, if you don't have the contacts, you start through a group. Let's assume you do that. Your first touch is going to be a summary. It starts with that. And you've got your lean plan with LivePlan in the background. That informs the summary, but the summary is going to be 2 to 5 pages, or ideally now in the angel investment environment, more and more of these summaries end up as you talking to the camera, doing, even with slides in the background, a 2 to 3 minute pitch for investors. So they just have to click and they can see you and listen to you, and they don't have to read your summary. Mm-hmm. And that summary then becomes one of these yes, no, or maybe points at which the real answers are maybe or no. And generally, I'm going to say we start in what I've been doing for 12 years now. We start with 40 or so submissions. They're summaries. And without any more information than what's in the summary, we will eliminate in one meeting 30 of the 40. Oh. No, we're not interested in that business. No, we don't trust the team. No, they don't have a team. No, they don't need money. No, we don't want to invest in marijuana. No, we don't want to invest in, some of the ones that there's one in particular that annoyed the hell out of me. They were going to put vodka into little plastic packages about this big for the obvious intention so that you could get vodka into football games despite the stadium rules. That was one where I said no to the whole, the group was in immediate agreement. No, we don't want to invest in, this was a local thing. So we have the big University of Oregon here. So there's a huge football stadium. We don't want to invest in students getting vodka in their backpacks through the screening of the stadium. So, you know, where they say investors don't read business plans, the element of truth there is that in that many cases, no, we didn't read the business plan. I can tell, regardless of the business plan, I don't want to invest in sneaking vodka in backpacks, right? So that's step one. And if you get through that screening, that's where I say the answer isn't really yes, no, or maybe. The answer is maybe or no. So you get a maybe. And what maybe means, this has taken, 3-4 weeks since you submitted, but then you get, if you get a no at that point, you should get good feedback from your investors. In every group I've been involved in, one of the things we do conscientiously with the ones that haven't passed the first screening, so we haven't even met these people, they haven't had a chance to be defensive or contentious or arrogant, we will call them up, somebody from our group, and we'll call them up and give them real feedback. Because in this context, we charge $99 in the groups I've been involved in for that initial submission. It's not like there's some of these things where you pay thousands of dollars to get investors to read your stuff. That's a scam as far as I'm concerned. $100, $200, or, you know, the pound equivalent, obviously.
Yeah.
So they'll get feedback, those ones. And then we go, so I just said of the 40, there's 10 that are still in the game. Those 10 will be invited to pitch. And of those, five will get no and feedback. And 5 will be invited to refine their pitch. Here's some questions we have. Here's what we're worried about. We'd like you to come back in 3 weeks and pitch again, but focus more on these key issues for us. And so that's one pitch. 5 of them get the no with feedback. 5 of them get maybe. The 5 that get maybe pitch again. And at that point, then we enter what we call due diligence, which takes 2 or 3 months typically, where we're really serious, and all 5 of them will get due diligence, which starts with their business plan. Now, in the traditional, that was a 20 or 30 page business plan with all the summaries and the descriptions. These days, to be honest, more and more groups will accept your lean plan with your financials and your milestones and your metrics and your assumptions and your team background and your strategy summaries, but you don't have to dress that thing up because they've seen your pitch twice. So you can get by very often with just the lean plan. In half the occasions, it depends on which specific investors you get in charge of the due diligence. I'm in a group, say, typically of 40 or 50, and we'll divide up into teams of 4 or 5. So some of them will want the old-fashioned business plan. And in that case, you're going to take only a day and write the summaries. Remember, nobody is going to decide on your business based on how well written the business plan is. Obvious spelling errors and lapses and sloppiness are not good, but they really want the investment, not the plan. So at that point, your business plan, but along with that, it's a long, painful process, this due diligence, because they're going to look at the legal, they're going to look at the incorporation papers. Is it an LLC or a C Corp or whatever? They're going to look at the cap table, they call it. Who owns how much and what conditions who's invested in this previously makes a big difference, because too many entrepreneurs screw up the early funding in a way that makes it unattractive for later funders. And they're going to look at patents if that's relevant. They're going to have patent attorneys, because trade secrets are good. Patents aren't that, well, a patent doesn't finish the game anymore. A patent doesn't mean you're free from competition. People get around patents, but they're going to look at the patents. They're going to talk to your distributors. They're going to talk to your customers. They're going to want to go to your offices. They're going to want to try the product, use the software. The due diligence can be painful. And here's the one that killed me, because I went through this several times. Every damn contract you've ever signed is going to turn up in due diligence, and all those NDAs that you think about while you're building the, you know, in my case, several years of these contracts with distributors and so on that were a pain in the neck to do. And you had your lawyer look at them, and finally you had to sign them anyhow because they were the distributors. And it was, you know, if you can't take the heat, stay out of the kitchen. You have a lot of contracts you don't like. You have to show them all, and the due diligence people will look at them. Then meanwhile, we are meeting the investors once or twice during due diligence, so that the due diligence team shares with the whole group, here's what we found out, here's what we're looking for. The group can then, well, let's look further at this or that and whatever. And that eventually comes down to yes or no. And if you get a yes, our favorite way of doing this, the angel investors typically get you as the first investors, so it's fairly early. We're often going for what we call a convertible note, meaning we're going to give you $500,000. We're going to write it up as debt. It's going to be converted to equity based on the price per share negotiated between you, the founders, and the venture capitalists when you get your Series A venture capital. And at that point, our debt gets rewritten into shares, and we get a discount of 20 or 30% on the price of shares that the venture capitalists are doing, because 2 or 3 years have gone by.
Yeah. Wow. Well, we could probably, unfortunately, the time has flown by, and we haven't got any more time for questions. But that was really valuable information that you've given us there, Tim. We do have some breakout rooms, and so the conversations will be able to carry on in a minute. But I just wanted to ask, is there any way that people didn't get their questions answered, that they could get in touch with you or ask you their questions?
Yes, absolutely. It's tim@timberry.com. So the domain name is timberry.com. My last name is Berry, like strawberry or blueberry, Timberry, Timberry. And my email is tim@timberry.com.
Wow.
And I can answer questions, sure.
Great, I really do appreciate it. Thank you very much. Okay, so Mike, hopefully Mike is going to work his magic and put us into breakout rooms.
So all the VIARs are in a room with Tim Berry and yourself.
Yeah.
And everyone else is in a room with me, but we're just going to have an open conversation. I'm going to facilitate. Okay.
Great. All right. Thanks, Mike.
Okay. Ready to go.